You're listening to The Pump Fake.
Yeah, welcome into the latest live. There we go. Some live word jumbles there. The latest live edition of the Pump Fake, brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, whether you're watching live or watching after the fact or listening as a podcast. Jarrett Bailey here with you as always. Today, Week 11 power rankings. I'll also go through the news roundup around the NFL ahead of Week 11. Get you set for everything going on around the National Football League. So if you are watching on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe. We're almost at 3,000 subs. That's pretty exciting. So please subscribe to the channel. If you are listening as a podcast, leave a comment, leave a review. And look, if you're listening as a podcast, why not head over to youtube.com/@jbaileyNFL and give a subscribe. Helps out the channel a lot, and it means a lot to me, and it's a good way to support me pretty easily. And then, it's always fun to watch things rather than just listen, at least in my mind. So please do subscribe. It helps me out a lot. So let's start out actually with we'll just go around the NFL with the latest news and whatnot. We haven't talked since the New York Giants fired Brian Daboll. And my thoughts were this: anytime you blow 3 leads of 10 or more points in the fourth quarter, when you're a team like the Giants, where this was a very big, all right, show us what you got year to keep your job, these things are going to happen. Brian Daboll came into New York, was that 2022, and immediately felt like the guy that was going to be there for a long time, led them to the playoffs that season. That big opening day win against the Titans, his first year, they go for it. 2-point conversion at the end of the game rather than taking the extra point to go into overtime. They convert the 2-point conversion. The Titans miss a field goal. The Giants start 1-0, and that really started a magical year for that team. Getting to the postseason, winning a playoff game on the road against the Vikings, and it felt like he could be the guy there for a long time. And we saw how everything played out, because a lot of us watched Hard Knocks, the offseason edition, where the Giants decided to pay Daniel Jones, not give money to Saquon Barkley, who obviously goes to Philadelphia. And the fallout of that certainly hasn't been great for Daboll and the Giants. I'll also say this, though, and I've said it before, but so many people got on the Giants for that. No, they shouldn't have paid Daniel Jones, but they also shouldn't have paid Saquon Barkley, because they weren't in position to give so much money to a running back. Philadelphia, on the other hand, was already a great team. It made sense for them to pay Saquon Barkley to help get them over the top, and he did. For the Giants, they were a bad football team. Putting a lot of assets into a running back made no sense. It didn't make sense when they drafted Saquon Barkley, because they weren't a running back away from being a Super Bowl team. So just throwing that out there. They shouldn't have paid Daniel Jones, although now it's looking like Daniel Jones finally found the right spot in Indianapolis. But I think a lot of that stuff got blown out of the water in terms of the overreactions to the Giants not paying Saquon Barkley. And so Daboll, I believe, a record of 20-40-1. Again, when you have something like that, you start 2-8 for the third straight year they've started that poor. These things are going to happen. Wish him nothing but the best. He'll land on his feet more than likely somewhere next year as a team's OC. There's been a lot of talk about maybe Buffalo bringing him back in some sort of consultant role for the rest of the year. Sean McDermott kind of slammed the door on that, saying that that's not under consideration right now. We'll see what happens next year. If Joe Brady goes elsewhere, or if they just move on from Joe Brady, the offense isn't looking good right now. If they want to bring Brian Daboll back in that role, certainly wouldn't be the first time that we've seen a coordinator leave one spot, become a head coach, and then go back to the team in which he came from. Robert Saleh obviously just did it in San Francisco. He's now in his second stint as the 49ers defensive coordinator. Dick LeBeau did it with the Steelers back in the day, was their defensive coordinator, went to become the head coach of the Bengals, then went back to Pittsburgh. So we've seen it plenty of times. We'll see it again more than likely. And if Brian Dable ends up being that guy for Buffalo, then they obviously had a ton of success together. He was a big part in getting Josh Allen to where he is today. So wish nothing but the best for Brian Dable. Mike Kafka now the interim head coach. And for Giants fans, Mike Kafka has been a guy whose name has, been involved in, I think, the last 2 head coaching cycles in terms of getting interviews. And so potentially they could have their long-term guy there already. A very smart guy, good quarterbacks coach is Mike Kafka. And in terms of the things that he's done with the organization, I would not be surprised if this trial run that he has for the rest of the year turns into him being the full-time guy. Again, a guy who's gotten head coach interviews before, been with the organization for a while. Wouldn't shock me at all if he's the guy. Jameis Winston starting for the Giants, by the way, on Sunday. So we all get to be subjected to an annoying pregame interview that everybody for some reason pretends is funny when it's really annoying as hell. Guys, we don't have to pretend that Jameis Winston is funny. It's annoying. We can all say that. So we get to be subjected to that. Whatever channel the Giants are playing on, it will not be part of my quad box. I'm just not going to subject myself to it. I'm going to see it plenty on Twitter, I'm sure, with somebody posting the video going, oh my God, look how quirky Jameis Winston is. Shut up. Oh, it's so annoying. I can't stand it. I really don't like it. So he'll be starting because Jackson Dart has a concussion. And that's kind of been the year for the Giants. All of their star offensive players have gone down. Malik Neighbors tore his ACL. Cam Scatterbo dislocated his ankle. Dart now with a concussion. So all of the bright young stars on offense for the Giants gone for this game. We'll see if Jackson Dart comes back in week 12, but he will not be playing in week 11. Arizona Cardinals wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. had surgery. He had appendicitis. That's always a little bit scary. So he got surgery to repair that. He'll be gone for week 11 and potentially longer. Cardinals, you can kind of stick a fork in them. You could have done it after week 8. They started off 2-0 and then lost, 5 games in a row, 6 games in a row. So in terms of, we talk about it a lot on this show now, the give a shit index, teams that you should care about, teams you shouldn't care about, they fall well below the line there. They fall below the give a shit equator. So don't have to really care about the Cardinals. When it comes to the NFC West, that feels like a 2-team race right now. I know that the 49ers are, neck and neck basically with the Rams and Seahawks, but both teams have 7 wins. They're playing each other this Sunday. Feels like a 2-team race there. Signing-wise, the Steelers have signed cornerback Asante Samuel Jr. That's very exciting for me as a Steelers fan. He had visits scheduled with several different teams. The Steelers were the last team. He ends up signing with the Steelers. Goes to the practice squad. Don't be surprised if he gets elevated before week 11. I think at the latest it'll be week 12 where he comes and makes his debut with the team. Had spinal fusion surgery, so it took a while for him to get cleared, but he has been cleared. And again, could start as soon as Sunday. The Steelers traded for Kyle Duggar from New England, and he started right away, more so out of necessity because the Steelers had a lot of injuries at safety, but he's played great in his 2 games as the Steelers safety alongside Jalen Ramsey. So considering some issues that the Steelers have had at corner, Darius Slay dealing with a concussion, Joey Porter's dealt with injuries this year. So I think that the best thing that they could do this Sunday would be to put Asante Samuel and Joey Porter as the starting 2 outside guys, Brandon Eccles, their nickel, and then have James Pierre be that number 4 guy who comes in. They play the Bengals on Sunday in a game that, as big a game in week 11 as you can get. They started off the season 4-1. They are now 5-4. They've lost 3 out of their last 4 games. one of those being to the Bengals. And with the Ravens now being 4-5, should the Steelers lose and the Ravens win, all of a sudden Baltimore goes from being 1-5 to leading the division in a matter of a month. So big game for the Steelers on Sunday. Big game for the Bengals too, who reportedly are trying to get Joe Burrow back on the field by Thanksgiving night against Baltimore. They need to get at least one win over the next 2 weeks to stay afloat. Right now, they're 3-6. They should have beat the Jets and the Bears. It's incredible how poor that defense is. But they got to do all they can to even warrant bringing Joe Burrow back in the lineup to begin with. So, big game for Cincinnati, big game for Pittsburgh. For all intents and purposes, I mean, if the Steelers go to 5-5, yeah, they'll still be in the wild card race. If the Ravens take over the division lead, they're not going to give it back. So, Pittsburgh needs to hold on to that for as long as they can because they have a slew of tough games down the stretch where game in Chicago, not going to be an easy win. And the last time they played in Chicago, they lost. Granted, it's 8 years ago, but not an easy place to play. They still got a game against Buffalo, game on the road against Detroit, both games against the Ravens. So a lot of tough games in the back half of the schedule for the Steelers. The Bills signed wide receiver Mecole Hardman. Their offense, man, the Bills' offense is bad. And it's inexplicable that Buffalo has somehow turned Josh Allen into the passenger of the offense rather than the driver. And, going back to late April when Brandon Beane had an appearance on WGR in Buffalo and told off the hosts for, and I quote, bitching about a receiver. Now we fast forward ahead. The Bills receivers are bad. They tried trading for Jalen Waddle, reportedly offered a 2026 third-round pick and a 2027 first-round pick. The Dolphins sounded willing to play ball, according to Tom Pelissero, who said that the Dolphins wanted a 2026 first-round pick rather than a 2027. And apparently that was the rift that came between both sides, and the deal didn't get done. And so now the Bills go into the second half of the year with bad receivers, a defense that can't tackle, and are once again going to be over-reliant on Josh Allen and James Cook to do everything while they have 51 other just guys who are underwhelming and more than likely probably won't get the job done. So we'll see with Mecole Hardman. But I'm not going to bank on Mecole Hardman being the secret ingredient that fixes the Bills. Joe Brady's play calling has been bad. And the receivers that they currently have, like Keon Coleman was drafted to basically be Drake London. He's not that. What he's good at is like the power slot yak stuff. The problem with that is that the Bills already have a really good slot receiver in Khalil Shakir. So bringing in Keon Coleman became incredibly redundant because he's not an outside 50-50 ball guy, at least not in the NFL. He may have been good at that at Florida State. He's not good at it in the NFL. He has one contested catch this year per PFF. He's not going to get the job done. So bring in Mecole Hardman. That's great. Utilize that speed because he does have that. If they can use that to take the top off the defense, then great. Maybe that will help them a little bit. But they have no speed at receiver. They got no deep threats at receiver. Perhaps they also elevate Gabe Davis sooner than later. We'll see if that ends up helping them in any way, shape, or form. But what I would do if I was Buffalo, obviously I'm not going to never let Keon Coleman touch the field again, but he's going to have a reduced role if I'm in charge. And I'm putting Elijah Moore on the outside because at least Elijah Moore has shown something. And last year in Cleveland, north of 60 catches, respectable season. You can put him in the boundary or in the slot. Like you can do more with Elijah Moore. He's faster than Keon Coleman. He's a better route runner than Keon Coleman. Like Elijah Moore does everything better than Keon Coleman. And I understand why they want their second round pick to be the guy that gets the most snaps. But man, through a season and a half, he's shown what he is. He's not a 50-50 guy. He's not fast. Like there's just not a lot there to love. So think it's time to pull the plug on that. Use him in a more limited role. When you go 4 wide, you go empty, put him in the slot and get him on the field. But in terms of what they're asking him to do, he's not good at that. And it makes drafting him look very redundant when you already have a guy in Khalil Shakir who does all the slot stuff. So, you guys who have followed me for any amount of time know how I feel about Josh Allen. He's my favorite player in the NFL, and it's very frustrating watching this team just waste what they have at quarterback year after year. And this season in particular has been very frustrating from a front office standpoint where they had opportunities to bring in receivers in the offseason. There's plenty of guys that they could have tried to bring in, and they didn't because of their ego. And now their ego's bitten them in the ass, and they're going to have to rely on, the likes of Mecole Hardman and Gabe Davis to fix an offense that, the passing game has been very broken this year because they don't have anybody who can get open downfield. So that's my thoughts on the Bills right now. Look, they're going to be a playoff team, almost certainly. They'll get into the postseason, but it's not about getting to the postseason for the Bills. We know they're going to be there. It stopped being about getting to the postseason a long time ago. Once they reached the AFC title game in 2020, it stopped being about just getting to the postseason. It's about, all right, when are they going to win it all? And of course, that rule of 5, where no quarterback head coach combination in the history of the NFL has ever won a Super Bowl together after being together north of 5 years, if they hadn't done it already. It's been way longer than 5 years for Josh Allen and Sean McDermott. If they don't get the job done this year, they should absolutely move on and find some new leadership, a new regime, new voices. Will they do it? I doubt it. Should they do it? Absolutely. But that's a conversation for another time. All right. Power rankings. Let's get into the power rankings, everybody. So 1 through 8. And if everybody's wondering, oh man, how'd you make this graphic and everything? Download the Ball app, and you can make your own power rankings in there every week as well. So this is courtesy of the Ball app. Let's start. The Rams. I had them as my top team last week. Even after the Bills beat the Chiefs, it appears I was a little bit ahead of the curve because it looks like the consensus is that the Rams are the best team in the NFL right now. Matthew Stafford playing at an MVP level. Defensively, their secondary is getting better as well. Emmanuel Forbes is actually looking like a really solid player. Remember, he was drafted 16th overall by the Commanders. It didn't work out there. He goes to the Rams and he's had a really nice season. Their front seven is very good. And you look at all the guys that they have offensively, who they're going to look at to beat you, and they do it every week. It's Kyron Williams, it's Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams. Those are their big 3, and it's very hard to stop an offense that has 3 all-pro players on it. So the Rams, my number 1 team. After all the conversation that took place around Matthew Stafford because of the immortal chamber and his back and stuff in the preseason, it looks very silly right now considering how well he's playing. The Chiefs are number 2. They had their bye week this past week. Considering what we saw from Buffalo, which we'll get into, I don't feel any sort of confidence that the Chiefs will lose to the Bills in the postseason should they face each other. The Lions are number 3. They scored on every possession they had against the Commanders. Dan Campbell calling plays was masterful. Big game from Jahmyr Gibbs. Huge game from Jamison Williams. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a nice game as well. They got all of their big names involved, and the Commanders had 0 answers for it. So Dan Campbell calling plays going forward for the Lions, that is something I will be very intrigued and will be keeping a close eye on for the rest of the year because they looked absolutely deadly on that side of the ball. They move up 6 spots in this week's power rankings. The Patriots move up a spot after beating Tampa Bay. The entire conversation around Drake May and the Patriots this year is like, oh man, who have they beaten? Well, they beat Buffalo on the road in primetime, and they just beat a really good Tampa Bay team on the road as well. And when they do play the lesser opponents of the NFL, the Cleveland Browns, the Tennessee Titans, they haven't just beat them, they've destroyed them. That's what good teams do. You beat the other good teams, you destroy the bad teams. The Patriots have done that. Drake May, along with Matthew Stafford, probably the 2 front runners for MVP. Mike Vrabel, probably the front runner for Coach of the Year. Seattle moves up 2 more spots. They are my number 5 team. They dismantled a Cardinals team that was riding high off a win against Dallas last Monday night, but really came down to earth facing a strong Seahawks defense. The Seahawks were leading this game 28-0 before you could really blink. JSN had a big game. Zach Charbonnet looks really good in the ground game. And I've said it before about Seattle. Outside of JSN, they don't have a lot of big-name guys, but these guys end up being difference makers each and every week, whether it's Cody White, a lifetime practice squatter, having a big game against Washington, the tight ends A.J. Barner and Elijah Arroyo, the running back duo of Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. All of these guys have found roles with this team. Rookie Torrey Horton, who I don't want to forget to mention. All these guys have found roles within the offense, and it's working out very well. Philadelphia is number 6. They dropped 2 spots, which, some people might see as unfair. I'm sorry. But what we saw on Monday night was just an absolute that game. The NFL should reimburse us for having to watch that game. The offense looked poor. They win 10-7. And AJ Brown's already pissed off again, talking on Twitch streams about how the offense is bad. So not great for the Eagles, who, yes, they sit comfortably atop the NFC East, but once January rolls around, I am not confident that they're going to be able to beat the Rams, the Seahawks, the Lions, the Bucks. I think that right now they have real issues offensively. It's one thing to do it for, the month of September. We are now in mid-November, and these issues are still prevalent. So that's just who they are right now. Won't be surprised if A.J. Brown gets traded in the offseason. The Colts fall a spot. I know that they beat the Falcons, but it feels like the book's kind of out on them offensively. And the turnovers have started to go up, which is a little bit concerning. Jonathan Taylor had another big game. But it seems like teams can just say, look, if we just stack the box and make Daniel Jones uncomfortable by taking away the run game, they become susceptible to making poor offensive choices. So still a very good team. They still deserve to absolutely be in the top 10, but I have questions about how sustainable this is for the long term. I kept Tampa Bay at 8. Hard-fought game between a really good team in New England. Still the best team in that division by a country mile. A team that I don't want to see when they're completely healthy, or as close to completely healthy as they can get. So Tampa Bay stays at 8. Still a good team that just happened to lose to another good team. The Ravens hop into the top 10. I know they're 4-5, but they've won 3 in a row, and they are back healthy as well on both sides of the ball. They beat a Vikings team on the road. Vikings defense played pretty well. They brought pressure all afternoon, but the Ravens were able to force some takeaways of their own to end up winning the game. Baltimore hops into the top 10. The Chargers make a big leap after a nice home win over the Steelers, 25-10, dominated for 4 quarters. Offensively, they didn't do too much, but defensively, they gave the Steelers by far their worst offensive performance all year. So nice game for the Chargers, who remain, I believe, the top wild card team in the AFC. Buffalo drops out of the top 10 for me, man. Talked about it already. They rely far too much on Josh Allen and James Cook. Their play calling has become incredibly predictable. Defensively, they can't tackle. There's so much wrong with this team right now. Max Harrison seems to be a bright spot. He's got 2 interceptions over the last 2 games. But when it comes to the rest of that side of the ball, they're a little bit older. They're bad at tackling. That's a team that, while they have a great quarterback, they are very beatable. The Packers dropped 2 more spots. They got to figure out what the hell's going on offense there, man. Jeff Hafley has done a tremendous job with the defense. Offensively, that's a mess right now. I understand losing Tucker Kraft. That's not easy. He's a great player. But when you have a good quarterback in Jordan Love and you got a good running back in Josh Jacobs, and you can't figure out how to run the ball, that's a problem. The Steelers dropped 2 spots. Horrible performance from them offensively against the Chargers. Aaron Rodgers had a QBR of 4.6 against Los Angeles. And I'll say this about Pittsburgh. It would be hard for them to play that poorly offensively again. So that's kind of the silver lining here, but they dropped 2 spots after a bad showing. The Bears jump up 3 spots after a big comeback win over the Giants. They were down by 10 with about 6 minutes left. Caleb Williams runs it in for a touchdown near the end of the game to help solidify the comeback win. Fun team of the Bears, man. I know I talked about Mike Vrabel being in the lead for Coach of the Year. Ben Johnson's certainly going to be in that conversation as well. The Broncos, yeah, they beat the Raiders, but they dropped 2 spots, similar to why the Eagles dropped 2 spots. Their offense stinks. Bo Nix, not it. And I'll say this, I'm never wrong. I'm just early. I was not in on Bo Nix last year. He put up some nice numbers, but it was pretty clear that he was limited as a quarterback. He's had a bad year in 2025. The defense for Denver is awesome. Zach Allen, Nick Bonino put up a great performance without Pat Surtain on the field. They limited the Raiders to just scoring a touchdown. So the defense for Denver might be the best in the NFL. Offensively, they are a bad unit with no talent outside of Cortland Sutton. The running backs are good in J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey, but in terms of the passing game, nothing scares you outside of number 14. The quarterback certainly doesn't scare you at all. The 49ers drop a few spots after losing to the Rams in blowout fashion. We'll see with them, man. They have so many injuries on that side of on the defensive side of the ball. No Nick Bosa, no Fred Warner. Their 2 best players gone for the year. Christian McCaffrey is trying to do all he can to will them offensively, but this is a team that, when you have that many injuries, you're going to lose to the better teams around the NFL. Houston jumps up 5 spots. This is where I just don't feel confident in any of these teams. Once we get into, the 17 to 24 range, you can probably put them in any order, any given week, just because of how volatile this group is. They were down 29-10 at one point, and then they scored, 27 fourth quarter points to come back and win against Jacksonville. Great showing by the defense in the fourth quarter. Davis Mills had a nice game as the backup because CJ Stroud is dealing with a concussion. They shouldn't have won that game, but they did. So they deserve credit for that. 18 is the Vikings. I kept them where they were. I just don't know what to make of this team. I don't think J.J. McCarthy's good. Defensively, they're getting a little bit better, but offensively, that quarterback is really holding them back. The Jaguars drop a handful of spots because, you can't lose a game in which you were leading 29-10 in your division when you're still chasing the Colts to try to win the division. Liam Cohen looked visibly pissed after the game, as he should. There's some questions I have about Jacksonville in terms of their consistency. It's great that you can beat the Chiefs on Monday night, but then you lose to the Rams in blowout fashion. You get handled by Seattle pretty well, and then you blow a 29-10 lead to the Texans. These are games that you got to win if you want to be taken seriously. I moved the Falcons up a handful of spots because of their performance against the Colts. And I know that they lost, but when you look at the teams below them, I think that they're better than Arizona. I think they're better right now, at least in totality speaking, than Dallas, who you just don't know what team's going to show up each week. So, they lost, but when it comes to the other teams that are in this group, I probably believe in them a little bit more than the collective. The Cardinals get blown out by Seattle. Their season, they're looking forward to 2026 at this point. Kyler Murray is going to be shipped elsewhere. I think that they're just focused on finding their new franchise quarterback. Dallas drops a spot. Obviously had their bye week and whatnot, but 3-5-1. They have a lot to figure out on defense. Now, granted, they traded for Quinnen Williams. They traded for Logan Wilson. I expect them to get better defensively because they brought in, a great player in Quinnen Williams and a player in Logan Wilson, who, while he's not great, is an upgrade over what they had. So I think Dallas is going to rise up the rankings here in the next few weeks because their defense did get a little bit better. And if their offense can score points like we've seen them do this season, then they should be able to win some games. Carolina, I said it last week on the preview show. I don't care that they were 5-4. That's a bad football team. They lose 17-7 to a bad Saints team. That tells me all I need to know about Carolina. This is not a real football team. They're 5-5. That's great. I wouldn't be surprised genuinely if they go 5-12. They just lose out. Would not surprise me in the slightest. Cincinnati, again, they didn't do anything, but they move up because of the teams below them. We know they can score points. They've scored 80 points over their last 2 games, and they've lost because their defense is that bad. We'll see what it looks like against Pittsburgh. The Dolphins hop up a few spots. They blow out the Bills 30-13. Defensively, they played a really great game. They forced multiple turnovers. They were very opportunistic. Coming off, trading away Jalen Phillips, firing Chris Greer. This is a team that was very, dead in the water, but they get a big win over a team that has historically dominated them. The Giants fall a spot, 2-8. They were a very fun team for the month of October when Jackson Dart came in and they beat the Chargers and they beat the Eagles. But with Scattaboo out, with Malik Neighbors hurt, with Dart hurt, this is a team now that's going to be focused on finding its new head coach, whether it's Mike Kafka, whether they go outside the organization, perhaps Mike McCarthy to be that next guy. We'll see. The Commanders, this is just a rough situation for a Washington team who had a magic carpet ride to the NFC title game last year. Jaden Daniels hurt. Terry McLaurin been hurt all year. They don't really have anybody on offense that scares you outside of those two guys. And when they're out of the lineup, you see what happens. Detroit did whatever they wanted to them defensively as well. I mean, that is a poor defense right now. Dan Quinn taking over as the defensive play caller because Joe Witt just wasn't getting the job done. They want Jaden Daniels to come back at some point this season, but if you keep losing games and it's pretty clear you're not going to be a playoff team, I don't know how much I would risk that. The New Orleans Saints, I just kept them at 28. They didn't rise. They didn't fall. I don't think that they're better than Washington. I couldn't move them. Certainly couldn't move them down after winning. This is still a bad team who got a win over another bad team. The Jets jump up 2 spots after beating the Browns. They had 2 kick return touchdowns, one on a kickoff, one on a punt. Justin Fields had less than 60 yards passing in this game, and they still won. They put up 27 points. Bad special teams from the Browns. Good for the Jets. They've won 2 straight. Didn't think we'd say that all year, but they've won their last 2 games. The Browns fall 4 spots. Yeah, when you lose to the Jets in the manner in which you did, you're going to fall down the rankings pretty heavily. Offensively, like we know the tale right now for the Browns. They don't have much skill on that side of the ball. Defensively, they're pretty solid, but that's been the issue with them the last 2 seasons. The Raiders are 31 and the Titans are 32, comfortably the 2 worst teams in the NFL, especially with the Raiders, man. Like we saw, having to see what we saw on Thursday night. Bad primetime slate for the NFL this week. Broncos, Raiders on Thursday night, absolute dud. Chargers, Steelers on Sunday night, dud. And then Packers, Eagles on Monday night was brutal. So easily the worst primetime week of the NFL this past week. And like I said, the Titans round us out at 32. And that, is the Week 11 power rankings. Thursday night football tomorrow. Who does play on Thursday night tomorrow? The Jets and Patriots tomorrow. And we'll see what the odds are of that, courtesy of our friends at FanDuel. Drum roll, please, as it gets up. The Patriots, my God, 12.5-point favorites on Thursday night. I know that they are the better team. I'm going to take the Jets to cover. Thursday night games are weird. It's a short week. I'll take the Jets to cover. I might, in a parlay, take it like alternate spread, like 18.5, and throw that in with a few other things. The over-under 43.5. I might take the under. That feels like a fine bet to take. And usually when you got the under, it's much easier to have the dog cover because not a lot of points are scored. So I will take the Jets to cover, and I will take the under 43.5 on Thursday night football. And we'll be back later on Friday with the full Week 11 preview, going through every game on the schedule to get you set for Sunday. And again, if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. We're almost at 3,000 subs. If you're listening as a podcast, jump over to youtube.com/@JBaileyNFL to subscribe. Follow me on Twitter @JBaileyNFL as well. And like I said, we will be back later on in the week to get you set for Week 11 around the NFL. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next time on the Pump Fake.